Cole Baudouin. Now, Cole Baudouin was ranked a little bit lower for me, but I've always felt that he's just a good player. He's a player that goes out there and puts his heart out there on the ice, and if you love players like that, then by all means, he's your guy. He takes the puck in his own end, he puts his shoulder down, and he barrels up the ice into the offensive zone, fending off anyone who comes in his way. He'll drop the gloves, he'll throw hits, he'll go to the net, he'll throw pucks in front of the net. He just keeps it really simple in a power forward kind of way that could work. He'll be as good as he is strong at the next levels of hockey, and I really do think that Baudouin could be a good NHL player at some point. Is he the most exciting player out there? Well, not particularly, but he does bring a lot of things to the game that I think will work quite well in the National Hockey League. And for a late first-round draft pick, and maybe he's a third-line sort of energetic, grindy guy who can drop the gloves if need be and be just one of those guys on your team, you could have done a lot worse. And so for them, I had him ranked a little bit lower, but I totally see where they're coming from with this draft pick. They drafted a guy that I had slightly lower on my list in Julius Miettinen. I think Miettinen does project pretty well as a third or fourth line center in the NHL. He's very positionally aware, he gets around the ice okay, he makes smart plays, and in the offensive zone, it's pretty simple. Go to the net, make things happen. He does that, it usually works. Miettinen's a pretty simple profile. He's not super flashy or anything, but he does drive decent results in the games that I tracked, and in the games I saw, he was also pretty decent. So we'll see what happens. I probably would have gone a little bit of a different direction here, but Miettinen is a pretty solid pick that could round out that forward group that is really high on firepower so far. They picked Luca Morelli, and look, I've seen Morelli a few times this year. I think he's fine. I can't say I look at him and I don't like how he plays. It's just, he goes out there and plays hockey. He's got a bit of skill. He can see the ice decently well. I feel like at the under-18s, he showcased exactly what I'm talking about, where he didn't really move the needle, but he was being perfectly fine. And again, if you get something at 86th where in the NHL he's perfectly fine, then you've done really well here, and maybe that's what happens with Morelli. Took Atos Koivu. Now, it would be easy to look at that pick and then look out the side of your eye and go, but Saku Koivu's son, is that the best player there? And I think there's a shred of truth to that, but I don't mind Atos Koivu. Every time I watched him this year, I came away going, all right, smart player, moves the puck pretty well, doesn't really make that many bad decisions, but needs to fill out, needs to get stronger, needs to get quicker, all the basics that a young player basically needs to develop, but there is a strong mind for the game around him. And again, he's one of these guys you can tell is the son of an NHL player. He just seems to have a really good grasp of the game, and maybe they have something here in Koivu. I think he could be an interesting bottom six center, maybe a winger at the next level, but at 70th overall, sure, I get it. If you have a really good inside track on him and you think he's going to develop well for you, I have no problems with that. Javon Moore at 112 was, I think, a decent pick. He is an 05 playing on a dominant Minnesota high school team, but his physical dominance at the high school level is a big reason why his team was so good this year. I just focused a lot more on his USHL games this year and wasn't really blown away with it. He was not really the physically dominating player as much that I saw at the high school level, and he is already on the older side of the draft class, so we'll see how that goes, but you do have a long runway with him, and over time he could get quicker and more skilled and apply himself more physically more often and in better scenarios, and maybe end up a better player than his draft pick might indicate. At 128th, they drafted high school flavor of the week, Hagen Burrows. He played for one of the most dominant high school teams in Minnesota this year, and when I watched him at the USHL level, I wasn't really blown away. I know he was productive. He's an 05 born player coming out of high school, so I set my bar a little high for him, and this is around where I thought he probably should maybe go, but there were players that I just liked more from what I saw that played with more pace and more speed and more intensity. But Burrows moves the puck well, he's a nice guy who can quarterback a rush. It's just not always the quickest rushes that you're ever going to see, and that always concerns me when it comes to projecting to higher levels. But again, he's another one of these players with a pretty decent mind for the game, especially with the puck on his stick. You bet on him in college and see where he's at. One of my favorite players of the year, Kieran Walton of the Sudbury Wolves. This guy has all the tools to be one of the most fascinating players in this draft class and was well worth a swing at 187th overall. The combination of size and skill and pace in his game was really impressive. He's not the best skater, but he gets up the ice really, really effectively. He's got a wicked shot as well. He gets into scoring areas. There's just a lot of things that Kieran Walton does, and I think at the end of the season, I watched a couple of games of him where I went, this guy could be really something. Like, there could be something here, because I thought he was really applying himself more often, using his skill a little bit more effectively, And I think with a couple of years of development in Sudbury, he could really be something. They drafted Trent Swick of the Kitchener Rangers. Now, I went and watched him after the draft because I didn't pay much attention to him during the year. He's 6'7", I believe. He's a very, very, very big player in the OHL who can go straight to the AHL next season if they want him to. I didn't really see anything that really blew me away. He's got a decent release on his wrist shot. He can get inside body positioning on guys, which you would expect considering he's 6'7". I just would be interested to see what happens in his career. I don't have huge hopes, but he does have a lot of size, there are some intriguing tools there, and it's 180th overall, so we'll see. Hockey Club gets a 2C. Now, I'll be very upfront. The direction that they seem to want to go with their draft picks, it's just a different philosophy from mine, and that's fine. I can accept that. I get it. You want to draft big players and see what happens with them in the next little while? Fine. I totally understand. I see where they're coming from. They just draft a lot of those guys, like a lot. And I wonder how that's going to work out, not in a way where I'm being critical. I'm just very curious at this point because so many of their players they draft are really, really big. But I will say I thought they had a really good first round, especially considering the type of team they very clearly want to be. Miettinen and Cole Beaudoin are going to have all the physical tools necessary to be good NHL players, and I do really think that the rest of their draft class, almost all of whom are at least 6'2" by my measure, are interesting projects to bet on, and I feel like Luca Morelli has a chance of playing games as well, but drafted a couple of guys who have fallen in the draft for one reason or another, and they just really haven't minded a lot of those guys. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm mostly talking about Brad Lambert. There's a chance that some of the players that are outside the first round could fill in the roster in a given role down the line. It just might be a little bit of a ways away if it ever happened. And I think that they could have aimed a little higher with a few of their picks, but in their books, I think they aimed about as high as they possibly can, at least if you're looking upwards because of how big these players are. We'll see how that strategy works out for them. It's not the first time they've done this, and I thought they did perfectly fine.